Welcome to Off the Wall. My name is Trey. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out the show this week. We've got a great one in store for you today. We've got Rob Jones Jr. from the Nashville Cats joining us today to talk about his football journey. He has one that's very fascinating, and some of the stuff that he does off the field relates to some of the stuff that he does on the field. And you'll get what I'm saying when you watch the interview in a couple of minutes. We're also going to talk about the past week in the AF1. IFL and the NAL. Very action-packed weekend from the weekend before this, and lots to dive into, lots to talk about. But before we dive into any of that, it's time to plug the socials. That's right. Please make sure you're following us on socials at Off the Wall FB. F as in foot, B as in ball. Off the Wall FB. We're on Instagram, X/Twitter, TikTok, Blue Sky, Threads, all the things and stuff. If you're on it, I'm probably on it. If you're on something that I don't know about, put me onto some game. Let me know what I need to be on. Comment on the video or comment on the podcast what I need to be on. But follow us on all of that. And if you're watching on YouTube, please make sure you're liking and subscribing to the channel as well. Share the video with a friend. Go check out some of the shorts that we've made for some past episodes. Go check out some of the Turf Tapes live streams that we've done in the past. We'll have a couple more planned coming up. That'll be exciting as well. But if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please make sure you're rating the show 5 stars on the podcast page, liking the episode, and sharing it with a friend as well. Helps get it in front of more people, as I think more shares and likes tells the algorithm, hey, people like this, we should recommend it to people, and that helps out a ton. So please make sure you're sharing it with a friend if you enjoy the show, and let people know about Off the Wall and what we're doing over here with arena and indoor football. So enough of that. Here's the interview with Mr. Jones. All right, on the show this week, we have a true veteran of the indoor and arena game. He's played everywhere. He's represented Team USA outdoors. He's a big reason why the Nashville Cats are looking like a contender in the AF1 this year. His name is Rob Jones Jr. Thank you so much for hopping on the show this week, Rob. How are things in Nashville as you guys are getting prepped for a pretty big game coming up this upcoming weekend?
Yeah, man, it's great over here in Nashville, man. The weather's great. Practice has been going awesome. The
Yeah,
guys are fired up. We just getting ready to take that trip to Albany. It's a
yeah,
little bit of sour taste in our mouth. It's a little bitter, but
yeah,
hopefully we could change the narrative this week. Definitely.
for sure. Yeah, this obviously the season didn't start quite as planned, but the fact that you guys were able to keep that game earlier this year close despite not having all your ducks in a row, I think that's a good omen for this upcoming weekend. So I'm excited to see what you guys can do.
Yeah, most definitely, man. The potential is there. The team is starting to bond a little bit differently now.
Yeah,
It's starting to come together. So, it's just like you said, just putting those pieces of the puzzle together, and just hopefully, we bring it all into fruition this weekend.
for sure. Yeah,
Definitely.
so there's a ton we can get into, and before we get too far into the arena ball, tell me a little bit about your football journey and what ultimately led you to arena and indoor football.
Okay. So I guess I could start back in high school. I'm from Tampa, Florida.
Okay.
I went to Armwood. I was a wide receiver there. So wide receiver, quarterback, kick return, punt return specialist there.
Hmm.
University of Delaware was the best of my offers. It was a top, top scholar university. It's a top 30
Yeah.
university academically. They just had a guy named Joe Flacco that just left from there. Yeah, so
Yeah.
they was on the come up. So, that was I felt like the best of my offers there.
Nice.
I did 5 seasons there. I actually was a 5-year letter winner. I ended up getting my senior year back. I was an All American there, ranked top 10 in the nation for punt return. Um,
Nice.
After I didn't really get a lot of attention from, the next level. I mean, some scouts spoke with some scouts, but no real interest there.
Right.
So I ended up going. A coach reached out to me. That was maybe like a year removed. They asked
Okay.
me was I still in shape, and I ended up coming out playing, enjoying the game. I did a little bit of time in the CFL with Calgary, the Stampeders.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, and then I ended up coming back to the arena game where I played in New York back in 2019 with the New York
Hmm.
Streets. I played with Orlando for 2 seasons. I played in Jacksonville. So, yeah, definitely traveled around a little bit, played a lot of
Yeah.
ball.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So the league that you started in, like arena ball, like what your first exposure was that like a smaller league or was that like an
Yeah, that was one of the
NAL?
smaller leagues. That was I believe the AIF, the American
Okay.
Indoor Football League.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first experience there, out in York with the Capitals.
Okay.
Yeah, and then after that, uh I played down in Fort Myers with the Tarpons. And
Oh
then
yeah. I forgot about the Tarpons. Yeah.
yeah, man. Yeah. And then I took a year or so off. I did performance training. I work with a lot of NFL guys down in Tampa, Florida. So
Nice.
yeah, I operate my own business down there. I've been doing that for about 7 or 8 seasons now. So that's
Nice.
kind of what I took a year off or so to do. So, but
Right.
it keeps me busy as well. So, being around
Yeah.
those guys, soaking up some of their knowledge as well. It's really a lot of great insight that comes from them as far as, just seeing how they view the game and things like that.
Yeah.
So I always attribute a lot of my success to those guys as well, because, they give me a
Right.
different outlook, different aspect of the game. Yeah, 2019, I went to the New York streets. I think I did pretty decent there. Um,
Hmm. Yeah.
um, yeah, then Orlando in 21, I took COVID off. Orlando in 21,
Right.
Jacksonville in 22, Orlando in 23.
Nice. So growing up in Tampa, did you know about arena ball growing up through like the Tampa Bay Storm, or was
Yeah,
that a little
yeah,
bit
you
outside
hear
your
a lot
radius?
about it, the Tampa Bay Storm, but
Yeah.
Tampa Bay Storm and the LA Kiss was the only two teams I really knew about in the arena.
Yeah.
I had never been to an arena game prior to my first game. So, it was definitely a new experience.
Right.
Fast pace. I enjoyed the game, though. I feel like it suits my skill set pretty decently. So, you
Yeah.
know, I enjoy it definitely.
So you mentioned going to Armwood. This is going to be an extremely niche Florida question. So is that the school that's like right off of I-4,
Yep,
like when you're driving
exactly.
by?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep,
I
right
was
out
trying to
there in the
pinpoint it
city.
in my brain. Me being an
Yep.
Orlando guy, I'm like, Armwood. I feel like I've seen that name a million times. And
Yep.
sure enough,
Yep.
every single time you drive by to go to Tampa, it's right there.
Exactly. So yeah, they got us top 10 in Florida for one of the most winningest programs the
Yeah.
last 20 years. So, a lot of history that comes out of that place.
Yeah. Their sign that they have facing the highway is like state champion, state runner up, and
Yeah.
it's a bunch of
Yeah.
years. So they
Yeah.
kind of flex
Yeah.
it to
Exactly.
everyone that can see.
In high school, I lost to a guy in the state championship by the name of Tim Tebow. So
Oh yeah, that'll do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, played a lot of ballers back in my day for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. So you mentioned the University of Delaware. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but two-part question here for University of Delaware. What ultimately led you to choosing Delaware, and what the heck is a blue hen? Can you educate us?
Okay, um, so I was I guess you would say a late bloomer per se, as far as my offers go. I
Okay.
had some interest from some D1, like your Purdue's, your Western Kentucky's,
Yeah.
um, New Mexico, Buffalo was one of my first offers. I never committed early. I guess I don't know what I was waiting on. I couldn't tell
Right.
you, but at the time I thought I was waiting for some bigger offers. I don't know. I can't really explain it, but
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
end of my senior year, I still hadn't committed, and a lot of my offers had fell off. So, um, the few schools that I did have left were Liberty, I believe, University of Delaware, Charleston Southern, Georgia Southern. A lot of the D1 AA schools were left
Yeah.
over. So I ended up taking my visit with about 6 or 7 other Florida guys. Everybody else committed. Um, it was my first time seeing snow. So
Okay.
We just and I felt like they was building something special at the time for sure.
Yeah.
We just had the transfer Pat definitely come in from Penn State.
Okay.
Um, he just had a big game against Ohio State, so we definitely had a lot of a lot of talent on the roster as well.
Yeah.
Coach
Yeah.
Republic. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it also helps having some of those Florida guys coming with you. Like you got some of that
yes,
home culture with you.
yes,
It's not like you're
exactly.
going to a place where you're the only Florida guy,
Yeah,
right?
exactly, exactly. That definitely had a big impact on it as well. That was like family
Yeah.
for sure. For sure, that definitely made a difference.
Yeah. And blue hen. Tell me about the blue hen. Like I get what a hen is, but the
Yes.
blue hen, that's one of the most unique mascots in all of college football, right?
Yes, yes, we're definitely one of the unique mascots. The blue hen is actually just a male chicken, so
Oh,
it's
okay.
the male hen. Yeah, it's the
Okay.
male. So yeah, so we don't I don't know exactly the backstory of why we're the blue hens, but
Hey,
um,
yeah.
but
It works, yeah.
yeah, definitely, definitely a lot of history at that place as well.
Yeah. So I was scrolling through your socials, doing a bit of studying, trying to come up with some good questions for you, and I saw some old videos that you did with East Bay, the
Okay,
sports
yeah,
catalog.
yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that and how did that opportunity come about? That's pretty sweet.
Okay, yeah. So I actually played Little League um, with the Cianci brothers. Well, one of them's with Body Armor, so I've done some work
Okay.
with Body Armor as well. And the other brother is with Champ Sports, who does all of the like the marketing with a lot of the artists. Your
Okay.
DJ Khaled,
Yeah.
your Michael Jordan. So anything that has to do with like Champ Sports or anything like that,
Yeah.
he's in control of the creatives of that. So he just told me, we wanted to work on the collab with me because I work with a lot of the pro guys, just sitting in a
Yeah. Yeah.
couple drills, and just kind of just like you know. Essentially give out some knowledge to the world. So, it
Yeah.
ended up creating a lot of traction and it did really well for them. Help
Yeah.
me help me with my business as well.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's a big boost for if you're doing the athletic training and like helping people out in the off season. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I was in East Bay. Like anybody who's anybody knows about East Bay because I'm sure
Yes.
people daydreamed about those catalogs of being like,
Yeah.
all right, I want these cleats, I
Yes,
want
exactly.
this, I
These
want this.
gloves, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. These socks, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, yeah, it was a great opportunity. I believe they made a deal away with the company, but I definitely
Yeah.
still look forward to recollabing, reconnecting with Body Armor as well here in the near future.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so speaking on the training that you do in the off season with some other guys in the NFL like you spoke on, how does that translate to what you do now with the cats? Do you kind of turn on dad mode occasionally, being like, "Hey guys, this is what we need to be doing."
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. I kind of just try to lead the charge by example. Just
Yeah.
getting in a little bit early, going through activation. Staying after practice, getting a little bit of
Yeah.
extra work in. Going to the gym later in the afternoons.
Hmm.
Just try to lead by example. Like you mentioned earlier. I lead the mornings, the stretches every day for practice, every day for
Yeah.
pre-practice, every day for the games. So I just kind of just spread my expertise and my knowledge of what I've picked up over the years, and just how the elites essentially attack the
Right.
game, and just their mentality behind it.
Yeah. It's really cool to see that you're combining what you went to school for with what you're
Yes.
doing now,
Yes.
and then you're literally doing it on the field. So you're able to execute these things that you're teaching to others. It's like, man, everything's connected. Like
Yes. Yes. Full
it's all
circle.
working together.
Full circle. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah,
So
definitely.
so let's talk about the New York streets. You mentioned that an older NAL team that's not around anymore.
Right.
How did that come about? How did the opportunity to jump over to that? And like you mentioned, pretty decent year, couple player of the week, couple player of the week awards here and there.
Yes.
How did that opportunity come about?
Actually, with my first experience with the York Capitals, we went undefeated that season with Coach Rick Marsilio, and
Hmm.
he ended up being the head coach for the New York team. He knows I operate my business down in Florida, so he knows I stay in shape, giving
Yeah,
those guys a look every day, two and
yeah,
three times a day. So. Um, he just believed in my abilities, and that kind of,
right.
what he see me work, he know how I attack the game, he knows my mentality. So
Yeah,
he was confident in my ability, gave me that opportunity. I just wanted to take advantage of that.
yeah. So I'm catching on a theme here: your network and staying ready.
Yes,
That
yes.
those are two big takeaways for anyone listening
Yes,
now, right?
yes, yes. So yeah, it has been times where I've literally took 2 seasons off, and
Hmm.
Coach Rick called me, and literally similar to this situation here. Honestly, Coach Foster, I didn't play last season,
Hmm.
and Coach Foster had been reaching out for a while. I actually didn't even I didn't even see the messages. He was reaching out. I didn't even see the messages. But I'm consistently on the grind, so
Yeah,
and I ended up seeing it one day, and then I was like, yeah, man, I stay in shape, I'm ready to go, and let me know when's camp.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yes.
So,
So after New York, you made your way back home to Florida. You mentioned playing
yes,
in Orlando and in Jacksonville. What was it like being able to play so close to home and get that opportunity for, friends and family to see you in
yes,
action and see you doing
yes.
your thing?
Yes, I believe one game I maybe had like 50 people at one game. So it
Nice.
was
Yeah.
great. Yeah, it was great to see my family, get to see me play. Because I played up north for college. So
Yeah.
it was hard for a lot of the fam to get over there, but that was definitely a great opportunity, being able to play in front of the family that haven't seen me play in a while, and my little
Right.
cousins, and my grandma got to make the trip because it's not
Yeah.
too far away. So
Yeah.
I always appreciated that. Definitely.
Yeah. It's a 2 hour drive for grandma instead of a 2 hour
Yeah.
flight, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Exactly.
Much
Exactly.
easier.
Much easier. Much easier.
Yeah. So I mentioned Team USA in the intro here. I'm very interested to learn a little bit more about this. So from what I gathered, it was like Team USA versus Team Mexico, and
Yes.
I think it was called the Global Games at SoFi
Yes.
Stadium.
Yes. Yes. We played
Yes.
at the
So
Charger Stadium.
yeah, so that A, how cool was it playing at that stadium, and B, how did that come about, and how did that fall into place?
Oh man, so yeah, that was amazing. Like their stadium is like surreal. Like, just
Yeah.
being on the field, seeing the difference between, the field is the normal 100 by 50, by 52, but the
Yeah.
stadium makes it feel so much bigger in there. So that was a cool experience. I actually knew one of the players who had played on the roster previously.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, so connections, another another one of those
Yeah, there you go.
connections.
The network. Yeah.
Yeah, the network. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I was literally probably the last one added to the roster. It was after the deadline. I had sent in my info, but it's not about what you know, it's who you know. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so I've been learning that definitely for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I was scrolling through your Instagram, like I said, gathering some stuff for the interview, and I was like, Team USA. Let me dig in a little bit of that. So getting a chance to represent your country playing football,
Yes.
that's pretty sweet.
Yes, it was. It was an awesome
Yeah.
experience. And those Mexican guys, they did awesome too. It was,
Yeah.
yeah, they didn't come out with the victory, but
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's,
but it was a good game. It was a good game for them
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, so like that gets us to this year. You mentioned taking last year off, and this year you're obviously in Nashville with the Cats. What was it about the Cats specifically that made you want to sign with them and get back on the field for the 2025 season?
Um, I was seeing that some of the names that was popping up on the roster, I said
Yeah.
they're building something special. They got some guys over there.
Oh yeah.
I was like, yeah, I would definitely, if there's anybody that I would play for, it would definitely be Coach Foster. So I
Right.
heard a lot of great things about him. Felt like family from the first phone call. So it was, it felt like it was the place to be. It just felt
Yeah.
right. I'm a big believer on things don't happen by accident. So it was just a lot of things that kept a lot of signs that kept leading me to Nashville. So,
Yeah.
so ultimately made my decision. And I was in shape. I was just home, just doing the training.
Yeah.
But it's a lot different when you get to put on the helmet yourself.
Yeah. 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 So when you get signed up with Nashville and you get here for the first time, what was that first conversation with Coach Arbet like? Obviously a legend of the arena game, but 20 plus years, one of the best to do it. What was it like getting to meet him for the first time?
Coach Arvet, man, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
He told me one of the first conversations I remember having with Coach Arvet was he didn't think that I would last 2 days in his
Oh
program.
wow.
Yeah, because he said he seen my highlight tape and I was doing too much dancing and I came out of the tunnel by myself. So he was like, he has an old school mindset. He
Yeah.
said, so but I think we got off on a great foot.
Yeah.
He just likes to see guys work hard. He really requires you to be great. He brings the
Yeah.
best out of you. I really believe in his mindset, his philosophy. Being a really good coach.
Yeah, and obviously it works. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah, it
look at the
definitely
past
works. It definitely works.
25 years
There's
of
a
Darren Arbet coach teams.
Yeah, there's a method to the madness. There's
Yeah,
definitely a method to the madness.
it's working.
Yeah,
So like
for sure.
if he was as tough as he is and the success wasn't there, you'd be like,
Right,
huh, why are we doing this? But it's
right.
there,
Yep,
right?
yep, definitely a method to the madness.
Yeah,
We're believing in it.
yeah. So
For sure.
the staff in Nashville has found some creative ways to get you involved in the offense, not just through passing, but they throw you in high motion,
Yes.
get hand off the ball to you a decent number of times per game. What's it like getting the chance to flex some of those running back skills and be able to show what you can do getting the rock like that?
It's been good, man. It's been good. Having the ball in my hands, it feels natural to me. I just
Yeah,
want to be able to make a play and, whichever way, whatever the play is called, if coach calling my number, I'm definitely going to do the best that I can to get it in the end zone
right.
every time. For
Yeah.
sure. For sure. I definitely love the dynamic and the direction that we're heading with our offense, for sure.
Yeah, I love the throwback feel that this Nashville team has. It's like it feels like I'm watching like a 2000s old school arena team versus some of the teams that are a little bit more shotgun based and a little bit
Right,
more
right,
read option based. This Nashville team is very much a we're going to run it at you.
right.
Are you going to stop it? Probably not. So
Right,
let's go.
right.
Let's helmet on
Yep.
helmet. So
Yep, exactly. Traditional
yeah,
mindset. Traditional
yeah,
mindset. We like to be methodical about it.
yeah,
Very molecular, like coach like to call it. But we're definitely doing some dynamic things in the offense.
yeah. Yeah,
Nice.
super fun team to watch. I'm excited to see you guys go the rest of the way.
I appreciate
Um,
that.
like we mentioned, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, it took a little time to get going, especially as you got some consistency at the quarterback position in particular. What excites you the most about this team going forward through the rest of the season that fans can look forward to?
Like I said earlier, just probably the way that we're starting to gel and like the team is starting to really bond together and starting to play as a unit. I feel like that's going to be very, very special, as we put these days, stack the days up, stack these weeks up together
Yeah,
and, really be a force to be reckoned with is as long as we're playing as the Nashville Cats, you know,
yeah.
I feel like, we can definitely create some magic here in these upcoming weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. Well, this has been great, and I really appreciate you hopping on here. I got one last question for you from
Yeah.
a big fan of the Cats. His
Yeah.
name is JT. JT wanted to ask you, what's the culture like within the Cats organization that makes it unique compared to some other places that you've played before?
The culture. I would have to say like how the hard work mentality. Like
Hmm.
when everybody comes to the facility, it's like you can tell that everybody's locked in, they're dialed
Yeah.
in, and they're really coming to work. We take practice serious, we even take the walkthrough serious. There's guys sweating in the walkthrough, so guys
Yeah.
I've never been on a team where we have the whole team out before like the period, before practice, before the pre-practice even start.
Yeah.
So pre-practice starts at, let's say 9:30. We have guys out there 15, 30 minutes early, just activation, just going through their own drills, just
Right.
that was the different mindset that I've noticed, as far as like the culture
Awesome.
goes. Is
Nice.
Really, really exciting to see that the guys really take it that serious.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, like I said, I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing. I'm looking forward to seeing how it continues to grow and evolve from here. That Cats culture seems like it's growing and it's a very real thing you guys got going on there. So, where can people follow you on socials, Rob?
Mr. Extra Fit is
Okay.
the name of all my socials. So it's MR Mr. Extra Fit with no E. So
Okay.
XTRAFIT, Mr.
Okay,
Extra
cool.
Fit, and that's on all handles, um, all platforms.
Sweet. Yeah, we'll link all those in the description. So if you're watching on YouTube, scroll down just a little bit. It's right there.
Yep.
Spotify, Apple Podcast, same exact thing. It'll be in the description. So go give them a follow and let them know you heard them on Off the Wall. So thanks again, Rob. Best of luck the rest of the season, and we'll
Thank
we'll
you.
uh, we'll stay in touch. All right.
All right, definitely claws up.
Awesome. Let's go. Big thanks again to Rob for joining the show this week and talking through his football journey, going from Florida to Delaware to running his training business to New York to Jacksonville to Orlando and now Nashville. He's been all over the place, and it's super interesting to see some of the stories of some of the players that are in these leagues where it's a lot more than meets the eye, and in terms of like the what got them to where they are today. So I'm really happy that he was able to hop on and talk about his journey, and he was making videos for East Bay. How cool is that? But please make sure you're following him on socials as well. The link to his social profiles are in the description below. So go make sure you follow him and let him know you heard him on Off the Wall. So we're going to dive into the AF1 first here. And the first game we're going to talk about from this past weekend was the Billings Outlaws at the Southwest Kansas Storm. And the Storm won this game 49-31. So Southwest Kansas really controlled this game on the ground and through a very strong defensive effort. A friend of the program, Michael Lawson, had himself a day. He had 15 tackles. 15 tackles. And he scored on a touchdown on a lateral play from teammate Keon Clary. So Clary intercepted it, eventually lateraled it to Lawson, and he found his way into the end zone. It was a very cool play. Go check it out on the socials if you haven't had a chance to see it. Two defensive touchdowns total for the Storm, and including a ricocheted pass off the net that got returned for another touchdown for the full length of the field. So the defense was playing great. They had the Billings Outlaws quarterback in hell all game long, and Shiloh Flanagan at wide receiver, he had the best performance of the day on offense. 4 catches for 74 yards and a touchdown. But the big question for Southwest Kansas now is, what do they do at quarterback? Why am I saying that, you may ask? Well, I'll tell you. Good question. Quarterback Jalen Morton, he was just offered a contract and signed with the Birmingham Stallions of the UFL. So the 5-3 Storm are now left with a big question mark at the most important position in all of arena football. So they're looking good up to this point with Morton at quarterback. He's probably one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league at this point, which is why he got snatched up and signed. But the Storm have to figure out what they're going to do. But luckily, they have a bye week coming up, and they'll have a little bit of time to get things figured out and potentially bring somebody else in, because I feel like they're going to have to bring someone in, whether it's a familiar face or someone new. Not 100% sure yet, but for Billings, this is probably the lowest of lows on the field, of course. Over the past couple of seasons, off the field stuff has been crazy. We all know that. But they have just not gotten the production out of the quarterback position that they would have hoped for over the last 4 games or so. So the games against Albany, Albany has one of the best rosters in all of arena and indoor football. Billings still should have performed better than they did in both of those games. And some of those games over the past four were very winnable if they just didn't shoot themselves, not just in the foot, but in both feet in those games. If they were able to avoid that, those games were very winnable. The game against Salina, threw an interception in the end zone end of each half. That was the difference in the game. And so some of the turnovers that they had in this game, there were some ticky tacky ref calls, but we're not blaming the refs. You take away a couple unforced errors, those interceptions. This is a game that is either like a 2 point game or a game that's in Billings' favor. So this was also the big debut of the new signings: Darius Prince, Dwayne Hollis, Terrence Ames, James Wynn, all of whom came over from Corpus Christi after their whole situation. And Darius Prince got in the mix very early with 9 catches for 88 yards and a touchdown. Hollis was able to haul in an interception. He led the team with 5 tackles. So the new signings were making impacts almost immediately. It took a little time for them to get involved, getting in the action. But not only were they getting production out of the new signings, but some of the vets or some of the folks that were already there also kept up. So Kenneth Brewer over at wide receiver held in 11 catches for 92 yards as well. But again, the quarterback position is putting them in some unwinnable situations, but help might be on the way. On AF1 Fan Zone, the show, go check them out if you haven't already. Very, very, very cool weekly show that they do. Stephen Titus, owner of the Outlaws, announced that they were signing Malik Henry, quarterback Malik Henry, who most recently spent some time with San Antonio earlier this year, spent some time with the Carolina Cobras a few years back, was bouncing between some teams in the CFL and some arena teams. So he could be the spark that is missing when you combine someone with the potential of Henry with someone that's proven like Prince and what has been a very productive wide receiver in Brewer so far this year. It could put them in a position to be successful right off the bat, and they'll have a chance to prove it this upcoming week when they take on Washington as Billings makes a final push for the playoffs because they're sitting at 2-4 right now. They can't really afford to slip up anymore. They got to start winning some ball games here. But the next game we're going to talk about was arguably not just the game of the weekend, but going to be one of the games of the year. When it's all said and done, when the dust settles, when the championship game is played, when we're looking back on the season and be like, there were some good games in there. Which ones were they? This is one of the ones. Salina Liberty went to the Albany Firebirds, and Albany won this game 64-58 in overtime. So 64-58, that's a ton of points. Maybe not in the historical context of arena football, but in this year in particular, definitely is. Rakeem Cato played an incredible game for the Salina Liberty at quarterback. He stepped in a few weeks back, no, last week against Billings. No, Cato missed Billings, but he started against Oregon. That was his first start. Yes, got that right. So this is Cato's second start of the season, and he just looked great in this one, and he got the Offensive Player of the Week award for the league. 308 passing yards and 8 total touchdowns on the day. His favorite target by a long shot was friend of the program just last week, wide receiver Malik Honeycutt, who caught 11 passes for 157 yards and 5 touchdowns on the day. And this was just a track meet from the very beginning of the game. They were just trading blows back and forth, and the Salina defense was having a hard time slowing down this Firebirds offense. But the Liberty offense was able to go blow for blow with them and able to keep up, and they just needed one stop. And the Liberty defense was able to give that to them in the fourth quarter. Liberty had the ball and honestly should have won the game in the closing seconds in the dying moments, but a holding penalty ruled a touchdown null and void and forced us into overtime. But Salina's sitting at 2-5 right now, but they're a very, very dangerous 2-5 right now. If you just look at the records, you're like, 2-5, it's whatever. We'll roll them. No. This is a very good 2-5 team. You take away those first 4 losses where they were just lost on offense. they're sitting at 2-1 over the past couple of games with an offense that looks very, very different. And they just look so much better than they did in those first four games. And they probably have the best outlook of any team not named Albany and not named Nashville in the entire league right now, based on what's happened over the past week or so. But for Albany, this one got very close and probably a little too close for comfort. I know some Albany fans were freaking out, thinking that they were going to roll over Salina, and Salina said, no, 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 not today. But Sam Castronova had an incredible game and did just about everything he could in this one, going 20 for 31 for 330 yards and nine touchdowns. Both Dwayne Brown and Isaiah Scott at wide receiver both had monster games. Brown with nine catches for 132 and five touchdowns. Scott, seven catches for 156 yards and four touchdowns. Like, teams would die to have one of those guys get that stat line in their game. Albany had two guys with those types of stat lines, which is just crazy. But as good as the offense was, the defense struggled mightily in this one. They struggled very, very badly. They got a taste of, honestly, what it's like to play the Firebirds offense. The Liberty offense was just able to do whatever they wanted, and the offensive line for the Liberty really neutralized the defensive line for the Firebirds that is usually pretty disruptive. And Cato had a lot of time to move the pocket and move around and find his guy, find Malik Honeycutt, 10, 15, 20 yards down the field and go down the field quick, fast, and in a hurry. So the dream of an undefeated Firebird season lives on. It's still alive, but they get a very, very hungry and very different Nashville Cats team than what they played earlier this year, but this time in Albany. So that's going to be a very fun game this upcoming weekend. That is going to be must watch. If you're watching any game in the AF1 this upcoming weekend, that's going to be the one. But speaking of games that were must watch, was the opposite of that. This next one, it was the Oregon Lightning at the Washington Wolfpack, and Oregon won this game 37-9. That's right, 9, as in one less than 10. So going from watching Salina versus Albany, an absolute thriller, to watching this was a drastic, drastic fall off. Like, it was crazy. It was like, imagine going to a movie theater and seeing a double feature, but the first movie was the best movie you've ever seen in your life, and the second movie was something that was made in, like, an indie film that was made in someone's backyard and was just rough to watch. It was just a rough go. And it's a little dramatic, but that was kind of the difference between the two games here. But starting with Washington, I thought they finally evolved last week at Oregon. They scored 41 unanswered points on offense. They were running the ball. They were being very intentional with their play call design and their tempo and their flow. And it looks like it was like, yes, they're taking the next step. Let's go. They're doing what needs to be done. And then this game happened where they scored a single touchdown on offense and just really couldn't get anything going. It was just an absolutely brutal game. They couldn't run the ball. They wouldn't run the ball. They refused to run the ball. They didn't get much going in the passing game. Quarterback Adam Cruz, he looked like he's going to be the guy for Washington moving forward last week, but this is just a bad game here, and it looks like they're going to be turning to newly signed quarterback Dominique Schaffner, who comes over from the Carolina Cobras and that whole dormant situation. So once again, the Wolfpack defense fought valiantly, provided turnovers, was able to get to the quarterback and be disruptive, but the offense let them down and just couldn't do anything. Wolfpack defense had 3 interceptions and a forced fumble, but the offense just bottomed out. It was just another failed game plan by the offense, and I don't know what to say for Washington. Last week Oregon left me speechless. This week Washington is not leaving me speechless, because I can wax poetic about how frustrating they are, but I just don't know where they go from here. But for Washington, or for Oregon, excuse me, this was an extremely sloppy game that they tried to give away to Washington countless times. Like, they tried to say, here, Washington, take the ball and go score. Let's make this a game. And Washington was just like, nah, we're good. We're not going to score. Nah, no, we don't want to go to the end zone. Like, that's what it felt like. And Dalton Cole for Oregon had 3 touchdowns, but also 3 interceptions on the day, 171 yards passing. Backup quarterback Jordan Ambrose came in as like a change of pace type guy. So maybe we start to see a little bit more of him in the future if these turnovers continue to be a thing. But this offensive line, once again, was letting a lot of pressure through. Dalton Cole, it felt like he was picking himself up off the ground more times than not in this one. And that's a common theme amongst all these Oregon Lightning games so far. But defensively, Mike Fields on the defensive line, Lavelle Spruce and Jeremy Spice or Jeremiah Spicer, excuse me, were able to live in that backfield of the Wolfpack, and they just made Adam Cruz's life hell for the entire game. So Oregon has to do better with their quarterback protection, and they have to be intentional with running the ball. They were intentional with running the ball in exactly one game this year, but they haven't really done that a ton outside of the occasional quarterback draw with Dalton Cole. So whether that is Jordan Ambrose running the ball a little bit more, maybe some two quarterback sets where Ambrose is in the backfield with Cole. I don't know. Let's get crazy. Let's get funky. Let's see what we can come up with. This offense has to get on track. I don't want to say back on track, but this offense has to get on track for the rest of the season because they can't afford to fall behind any more than where they're at. We're going to flip over to the IFL now. We had 6 games going on this past weekend in IFL Week 7. And the first game we're going to talk about is the Quad City Steamwheelers at the Fishers Freight. Quad City won this game 55-48 in overtime. And this Quad City team is a ton of fun. They're one of the most electric teams. And like we talk about like the Beaumont Renegades being a thrill ride. Quad City is also a thrill ride right now. Whether they're dropping 60 on teams or doing come from behind victories like this one, where they scored a touchdown with, I think it was 5 seconds left to force overtime. They're the only undefeated team left in the IFL right now. And this one did not come as easy as the others, as you could put together since it went to overtime. But the defense was getting run all over in this one, and it was a little bit shocking to see because this defense has been very stout for not the majority of the season, the entire season. And the offense had to provide some of those comeback dramatics where Daquan Neal was able to hit on some big plays in the passing game, throwing for 100 yards and 5 touchdowns, but really struggled efficiency wise and completion percentage wise, going 9 for 21 through the air. The running game wasn't nearly as dynamic as it usually is. And it looked to be part of the reason why Fishers was able to take control of this game in the second half. Fishers was able to run the ball from the beginning of the game until the end, while Quad City stalled out a handful of times on the ground and just couldn't get a ton going like we've seen them successfully do in the past. So the Steamrollers are still the best team in the IFL right now until proven otherwise. But this one probably feels a little too close for comfort if you're a Wheelers fan. But for Fishers, heading into this game, the biggest and most glaring issue for the Fishers Freight was the quarterback position. We've talked about it on the past couple of shows that the passing offense has just been atrocious. They just have not gotten enough out of the quarterback position, whether it's Keegan Schumacher or whether it's Jaya Wright. They're just not getting what they need passing the ball. So naturally, when you need to fix the running game or you need to fix the passing game, what do? You go and sign an all IFL running back from last season who wasn't currently rostered in Shane Simpson. As crazy as that sound, it worked. They were able to really effectively run the ball the entire game. Shane Simpson had 19 carries for 105 yards and 4 touchdowns. So 105 yards on a 50-yard field. Do the math here. That's like the equivalent of a 200 plus yard game in the outdoor world. Pretty good for being signed 2 days before, flying in the day of the game and hitting the field and doing all that. It's some true rock star stuff from Shane Simpson there. But like I mentioned, Fishers was able to take control of this game in the second half due to that relentless ground attack and being able to stop the run and stuff Quad City a handful of times. And Fishers was in the driver's seat to finish this game. But the thing that they struggle with the most, the passing game, is what they needed to rely on in overtime to score on the final play of the game. And the pass rush for Quad City was just too much and just put an end to the game. And I think they ended up putting the quarterback into the wall on like a drop back and a bad snap. It was a whole ordeal where I was like, man, disappointing finish for Fishers, but um, if Shane Simpson's going to be the answer for them on the ground, the passing game might not have to do a ton, but they're still going to have to improve. They're still going to have to become at least a little bit more efficient and at bare minimum minimize on some of the mistakes like bad snaps and poorly thrown balls that result in interceptions. If you're going to rely on the running game like that. But speaking of poorly thrown balls and bad interceptions, we're talking about the next game, the Iowa Barnstormers at the Jacksonville Sharks. Jacksonville won this game 53-22. So heading into this game, the Sharks were trending in the wrong direction. They started off 3-0 and they lost past two games, and they're looking for a big win to get them back on track. And they got it here. They got it at home against an Iowa team that was coming off a 68 point a game last week, and so it looked like Iowa was going to be able to make this a game and make some noise. I certainly thought they were going to, but Jacksonville exploded with a rushing attack of their own, going for 159 yards and four touchdowns between quarterback Caleb Barker and Vance Bennett, and the defense for the Sharks just manhandled the Barnstormers, absolutely manhandled them. Wide receiver Jaden Stoshak hauled in three receiving touchdowns in this one as well, and he's really emerged as the most consistent option in the passing game. And it seems like Caleb Barker and him have a bit of a rapport there. And I've been critical of Caleb Barker over the past couple of weeks and on socials. And he had a great game on the ground in this one. He had a pretty good game through the air as well. But some of the same flags that I've been talking about were evident in this game as well, where he went 10 for 17, 113 yards, and three touchdowns. Good. That's solid. But again, had multiple interceptions, three to be exact in this one, and he now leads the IFL in interceptions thrown. That's not a great recipe. It's just not. So they're saying at 4-2 with the league leader in interceptions at quarterback, and I guess you got to be happy with 4-2 considering how the offense hasn't been great, and this was their best output of the season. Let's not get it twisted. This was what they needed, but they're still making those bad reads, bad throws, bad calls on through the passing game that are just like, if they're playing anybody but Iowa, they probably pay for that dearly one way or another. But for Iowa, what happened? I don't understand it. They popped for 68 points last week. It looked like new quarterback James Cahoon was going to be the answer. He was able to facilitate. He was able to get the ball to playmakers. They were able to run the ball effectively. They were throwing in some fun rock star wildcat packages, whatever name we end up rolling with for that. But they were held scoreless in the first half of this game and didn't score their first points of the game until midway through the third quarter, and they just couldn't get anything going. And Cahoon, stat line looked a lot better than the game actually did for him. 21 for 34, 174 yards, three touchdowns, and four interceptions. Four. And those four interceptions were absolute killers for any momentum they were attempting to build throughout the game. It was just absolutely killer. A couple of them were in or near the end zone as well. And any type of running game that Iowa established last week was gone. They had 8 carries for 10 yards in this one, and it didn't even seem like they were trying to run the ball at all. And they were just one-dimensional and continuously put the ball in harm's way. And this is the third quarterback that they've proceeded with, and this is the third quarterback that has thrown multiple interceptions in a game this year. So it reaches a point where if every quarterback you put out there has the same end result, is it the quarterback? Is it the approach? Is it the system? Like something's not working. Like something is just not working with this Iowa team, and it hasn't been working for a couple years now. So this is a head scratcher, and it makes you think there's a lot more than what is just going on the field that's causing this team to struggle as much as they are. The next game we're going to talk about is the Green Bay Blizzard at the Tulsa Oilers. And Tulsa won this game 46-30, and it wasn't even that close, folks. Tulsa's defense has been absolutely tearing it up since the last game against the Blizzard, where the Blizzard scored 74. We don't like talking about that game. But you take away that one game in Green Bay, and this Tulsa defense is the second best scoring defense in the entire league so far this season. That's pretty good. second best is pretty good at this point in the season. The secondary's been swarming and really putting opposing offenses in a pretzel all year, and this game was no different. They came up with 4 interceptions against a pretty good Blizzard offense and an MVP candidate in Max Mailer last season. And they just jumped out to a massive lead in this one, and they had a 3 possession lead in the third quarter, and were just able to work the clock while continuously adding points to the tally. So TJ Edwards only had 4 touchdowns, only only had 4. TJ, what's going on, man? Only 4? Come on, I'm joking. But they controlled the pace of the game. Like I was saying, the defense played so well that they didn't need a 6, 7, 8 touchdown performance out of TJ Edwards. They just needed someone who could take care of the ball, work the clock, eventually get it into the end zone, and that's what they were able to do. Running back slash athlete slash backup quarterback slash wide receiver. Sauce Rogers had a great game on the ground as well, and he was getting nearly 5.5 yards per carry, and he found the end zone twice. And this game was much more of a beatdown than the final score indicates. Like, don't let the 16-point spread, like, it was not a 16 point. Like, they lucked out with I think a blocked field goal, recovered for a touchdown late. So this should have been like a 23, 24 point game, as it was for the majority of the game. But for Green Bay, this was a tough one. And just everything that could have gone wrong in the first half did. If you look at the first 5 possessions for the Blizzard in the first half: missed field goal, turnover on downs, interception, fumble, made field goal. So 5 possessions, 3 points. Not a good ratio, just not. So it's going to be hard to win a game in the IFL with that type of output in the first half, unless your defense is playing as lights out or even more lights out than Tulsa's has been like to this point of the season. And Green Bay's defense is good, but they just weren't playing at that level to make it like a 3-10 game going into halftime. It just wasn't that. So I think the Blizzard are usually pretty good at being intentional with running the ball, and they seem to deviate from that and found themselves in a hole early, and they were like, all right, pass, pass, pass. Like, no, you can still run the ball. So I think they'll go back to being a little bit more intentional with running the ball with Kemo Clark and Max Mailer in the games ahead to hopefully offset this and get back above 500 at this point of the season. But one of the biggest upsets in all of indoor and arena football, not just this week, but this season, in league play, I will say. That's for you, Omaha. The Arizona Rattlers went to Tucson to face the Tucson Sugar Skulls, and Tucson won this game 42-35. So I think Arizona closed as an 11.5 point favorite, and Tucson was able to win outright. So there's just something about Tucson at home that is just, I don't get it. Earlier this year, Jacksonville went to Tucson. Tucson dragged them into the mud and just made it a fist fight, and Jacksonville escaped with a 7 point win. Last year, the 7-0 Vegas Nighthawks came into Tucson. They dragged Vegas into the mud, made it a fist fight, and upset the undefeated Vegas Nighthawks at that time, and gave them their first loss of the season. And that was the last undefeated team. Arizona comes into town looking damn good at this point of the season, and Tucson hands them their first loss of the year. So George Reyna at quarterback, 142 yards and 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's key. And then wide receiver Larry Harrington, who, if you recall, was just recently traded from the Rattlers to Tucson, had 8 catches for 61 yards, and he had 3 touchdowns in the second half. So Tucson started in a bit of a hole where the Rattlers were able to jump out to a 14-0 lead pretty quickly, but Tucson's defense kept them in it and gave them a chance to come back and win, and they ultimately did. So it was a very fun game to watch. Highly recommend going and checking that one out on the IFL Network if you haven't already. But for Arizona, this was a very un-Arizona-like game. And is it the Tucson mysticism of dragging their opponents into the mud? Is it something in the water in the visitor locker room? I don't know what it is. We might need to investigate. But the Rattlers offense has been spectacular so far this season, scoring over 49 points in every single game up to this point. But quarterback Dalton Sneed finished the game 9 for 22, 148 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a late interception that gave Tucson the chance to win it. The Rattlers defense did a pretty good job of containing Tucson in this one, but the offense just wasn't able to execute anywhere near where they usually are. And if they are able to do that, this game's probably a blowout. Like they probably win by a couple different possessions, but the Tucson defense was really able to keep Snead and company in check outside of a handful of big chunk plays that they gave up. So Arizona's still one of the best teams in the West. They're still gonna be one of the teams that folks have to deal with, whether they like it or not. But they get a very big test this upcoming week when the Bay Area Panthers come to town in what is going to be probably the game of the week in the IFL, arguably the game of the week in all of indoor and arena football. So it's going to be a very exciting one to watch over in Glendale. Next game we're going to talk about is the Northern Arizona Wranglers at the Vegas Nighthawks. And Vegas won this game 43-37. So Vegas got a much needed win in this one, but we're left with a little bit of uncertainty at quarterback. The past couple games, quarterback Jaden DeLora has made the start, and he has taken care of the football over these past couple of games and really executed the offense in a way that was refreshing to see out of this Vegas team. And he was off to a pretty good start in this one before he left the game with an injury. I think he scrambled and might have tweaked something in his leg. He came up limping a little bit. And up to that point, he was 7 for 13 for 85 yards, 2 touchdowns with another on the ground. But then Jerome Johnson came into the game and he played pretty well in this one too, and looked a lot more like his 2024 MVP self than he has at any point this season outside of like the very first game. Tamorian Terry had 3 receiving touchdowns on the day, and Darius Williams on the defensive side of the ball had 2 blocked field goals. So not often do you see 1 blocked field goal. He had 2 blocked field goals that proved to be big momentum shifters. One of them got recovered for a touchdown by James Caesar on the secondary as well. So that recovered touchdown ended up being the difference in the game. So Vegas is back above 500 for the first time since week 2. But that quarterback situation is something that we're going to have to keep an eye on and see how that unfolds, see if we can get some answers on how DeLora is doing health-wise and if the keys are being fully tossed back to Jerome Johnson here. But for Northern Arizona, even though they still lost, this was by far their best game of the year. Caleb Lowe, most recently with the Idaho Horsemen of the NAL, he just signed with the Wranglers earlier that week, and he got his start. He got his first start for the Wranglers in this one. And again, this is the absolute best they've looked all season. This is the first time they scored above 30 points. The defense was able to keep Vegas in check for the most part and give them a chance to at least come back and win it. Again, if you take away that blocked field goal, Northern Arizona has a chance to steal this one. But Lowe ended up finishing the game 15 for 26 for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. But again, didn't have any of the painful turnovers that have just sunk the Wranglers all year. So he doesn't have the same ability to run the ball. He's not the same mobile threat that CJ Fowler is and was for the Wranglers. But I feel like the coaching staff will be able to figure that out and get the ball into the hands of people that are more mobile threats, like running back Nolan Susel had 3 touchdowns in this one, but all were from short range in the red zone. So how do you expand that success of running the ball outside of the red zone? And when you have the ball at midfield, how can you get the ball in his hands? How can you get the ball into Deshaun Stoudemire's hands, who is very much wide receiver 1 in this offense right now? So there is some optimism with the Wranglers offense right now with the addition of Caleb Lowe, but how they're able to implement some of the things that were successful in this one all throughout the game and all throughout the field is going to be interesting to see. So Northern Arizona is still looking for their first win of the year, but it feels like they're getting closer and closer to being able to find it. But the last game of the IFL weekend is going to be the San Diego Strike Force at the Bay Area Panthers, the California Clash Part 2 of 2025. Bay Area won this game 57-34, an absolute thumping from the Panthers here. The California Clash has delivered some really classic games over the past 2 seasons. Some of my favorite games in all the IFL over the past couple of years have been these 2 teams duking it out on some late night Saturday and late night Sunday slates. And it looked like we were in for another classic. It was neck and neck heading into halftime, but then the third quarter happened and Bay Area put together one of the best halves of football that you'll see all year in any indoor and arena league. Just unbelievable. Bay Area was down 16-15 at halftime and then went on a 42-18 run in the second half, including four unanswered touchdowns that just busted the game wide open. Just floodgates were wide open. The offense looked outstanding in the second half and had good balance and good distribution of the ball. And five different players were getting carries in this one. Wide receiver slash running back, I guess. Josh Thomas had three rushing touchdowns on the day, and with quarterback Josh Jones going 11 for 18, 175 yards and three touchdowns through the air. And before the season, with the migration of Northern Arizona offensive talent to Bay Area with Rod Windsor at offensive coordinator, with Les Moss at associate head coach, we were talking about what would this team look like if we got that 2024 Northern Arizona offense with this 2024 Bay Area defense. You merge those two worlds together, that's a super team. This was a taste of what that looks like, where it was the first time where that Bay Area defense was clicking, and then that air quote Northern Arizona offense from last year was looking like the offense that grew and developed as Josh Jones grew and developed last season as well. So Bay Area continues to be a problem, and it looks like they're starting to hit their stride. And the next game that they have again is against Arizona and to face the Rattlers. It's going to be a great game. So make sure you're tuning in for that one. But for San Diego in this game, they just continue to look rough on offense. It just seems like they're not able to make the necessary adjustments in the second half. And this is at least the second or third game where they were in it. They had control in the first half and they just fumbled it away in the second half, where the comeback in their first game against Vegas just completely falling apart in the second half against Bay Area. Nate Davis didn't look great in this game. He had three interceptions on 18 of 29 passing for 177 and a touchdown. San Diego did acquire running back Ed Vander, one of my favorite running backs in the league, earlier that week from the Jacksonville Sharks, and started to get him involved. And I'd expect you'd see him a little bit more actively involved as he gets reps in practice, as the weeks go by. But we're just not seeing those big explosive plays out of this offense that we saw last year. And is it a personnel problem? I know Journey Sloan has been out for a couple weeks with injuries. Is it personnel? Is it scheme? Like I'm not sure what the issue is that we're not seeing some of these same things out of this offense that we were seeing last season. Like they're being a little bit more intentional with running the ball, but the cost is like not nearly getting the same clip on those 20, 25, 30-yard plays that kept opposing defenses awake at night. We're just not seeing those. And they are utilizing a lot of the wildcat type packages with Rudy Johnson at quarterback, taking direct snaps and running and doing their thing in the red zone. And it worked. It's effective, but it's just they're always running the ball out of that formation, and Rudy Johnson has experience at quarterback. So what I'd like to see San Diego do is mix in a pass with Rudy Johnson there, mix it up so that you're not just running that in the red zone, but maybe at the 20, 25-yard line, you run him out there and run it. Maybe at the 10, 15-yard line, you run him out there, throw a quick slant to Vander or something. Like, I think that would help if what their standard offense just isn't working, isn't clicking the way that they're expecting it to. They have their most favorable run of the schedule coming up. They're facing Northern Arizona a handful of times, and they'll have an opportunity to get back on track, but they got to limit these turnovers. And if they can get Ed Vander a lot more involved, they should be able to get back up to 500 and stay in this playoff race. But yeah, the second half adjustments are just not there for San Diego, and hopefully we'll be able to see some of those things come to fruition and get a glimpse at some of that strike force offense from 2024 that we're just not seeing. All right, we're going to jump over to the NAL now, where there are a handful of games that we'll go through. The first game we're going to talk about is the Shreveport Rougarou going to face the Beaumont Renegades, and Beaumont won this game 55-54. So I'm constantly repeating myself. I'm always saying this week after week, but this Beaumont Renegades team is such a fun squad. Every game they play is a thriller. Every single one. And this game was no exception. The Renegades were down by 5 with just seconds left in the game. Carl Robinson throws a 20-yard pass to about the 7-yard line. Wide receiver catches it, goes into the wall, but then he's untouched, so he's able to bounce off the wall. See what I did there? Off the wall. He was able to bounce off the wall and get into the end zone to score a touchdown to take the lead with 2 seconds left in the game. So unbelievable dramatics yet again as their perfect season continues in their debut season. Carl Robinson had an incredible game, going 11 for 17 for 169 yards and 6 touchdowns. He's able to find Vincent Wilkerson for 3 touchdowns, Zuri Davis for 2, and then Kylan Herrera for 1. And the usually tough Beaumont Renegades defense kind of got beat up a little bit in this one by this revamped Rougarou offense that has just looked incredible over the past couple of weeks and truly revamped and truly revitalized. But they were able to get their hands on a couple of turnovers that ended up being the difference in this game and keeps them unbeaten at the very top of the NAL. But for sure, for Shreveport, for the Rougarou, this was 100% their best offensive performance by far this season. Before quarterback Guillermo Serrano got to town, they were incredibly one-dimensional. It was 2.5 yards in a cloud of dust. That was their offense. But with him, they're really able to stretch the field and pass the ball a ton. The kick return game was clicking. I think both teams in the first half, I think 3 or 4 kick return touchdowns between the two teams. It was just back and forth all game. But this Rougarou offense has been unbelievable, but been playing really, really good football. And they really changed their identity from being this one-dimensional team to Serrano's able to take the top off the defense and open things up for their running game a little bit more so that the defense isn't just able to hone in on, okay, they're obviously running the ball. They can't do that anymore. Serrano ended up with 167 yards passing and 5 touchdowns. And then running back Denarius Antoine ran the ball 9 times for 49 yards and 2 touchdowns. And they were in the driver's seat for the upset. They were until they kind of got in their own way and opened the window for Beaumont to sneak in and walk out with the win and keep their undefeated season going. But this change in the Rougarou's identity is for the best. They could not happen at a better time, but they have to start getting their act together now. And the entire outlook of the rest of their debut season looks pretty good if they can continue to get performances like this out of Serrano and that offense. So the next game I'm going to touch on, not necessarily talk about a ton, was the Omaha Beef hosted the Dallas Falcons, a non-league opponent, and the Omaha Beef won this game 70-0. So, gotta be honest with you, didn't watch it because kind of expected this to happen. I think it's interesting that we had some other league teams that didn't play this week that could have been plugged in here, and I don't know. I'm not going to touch on it too much, not going to waste too much time on it. But Omaha won big at home against a non-league opponent. So big congrats to Omaha for getting their first non-league win in over 420 days. So shout out to the Omaha Beef. But the next game we're going to talk about is the Wheeling Miners going to the Colorado Spartans. And Colorado won this game 41-25. So for Colorado, this was the Andre Sale and Lex Rosario show. Sale got the start in this one. I'm not sure if it was a health related thing, so I should probably just DM him. He's a friend of the show. He'd tell me. But with the exception of a couple turnovers, he played pretty well in this one. He was able to throw for 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Lex Rosario, the running back, still not used to that. That's still weird to me. He ran the ball 17 times for 65 yards and 3 touchdowns, while also leading the team in receptions with 5 catches for 45 yards and a touchdown. And the connection between Sale and Rosario is very clear, very evident. If you recall, they played together for the Tulsa Oilers last year. They went to Orlando together. They went to Billings together, had a cup of coffee in Billings. Then Andre Sale came to Colorado, where Rosario eventually joined him in Colorado as well. So that chemistry is already there. It's built in, and it's clearly paying dividends for them as it did in this game. And they're sneakily sitting at a very, very strong 5-2 record right now. And they're just a half game back behind the Beef in the national division. And with the way Andre Sale is coming back on and the way Rosario's been running the ball and being able to be a weapon, not just in the running game, but in the passing game, this team could get very dangerous if they get hot at the right time. They could catch one of the more traditional powerhouses of the NAL. I'll just say at Omaha or like Sioux City, they could catch them sleeping at a certain point if they catch them down the road, and could box one of them out of the playoffs based on how the current playoff structure is. And kicker Luis Ferreira continues to be a weapon for Colorado as well. 2 for 2 on field goals. He got a deuce. He was 100% on the extra points. He has been incredible over the past couple of games for Colorado. So shout out to the kickers. Kickers are people too. But for Wheeling, this was a rough go. This was just a not great experience for the Wheeling Miners, especially in the second half where the Miners were shut out, completely kept out of the end zone, did not score any points in the second half, and 4 total interceptions from the Miners quarterbacks, and they just could not maintain possession of the ball. They just couldn't. Grant Russell looked off in this one at quarterback, going 8 for 18 for 115 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks, but then another 2 touchdowns on the ground. And his stat line as a quarterback, if you don't look at this final score, just look at his stat line, you can usually tell how poorly or how well the game went for the Miners just by looking at how his stat line, in particular, his completion percentage, ends up looking. But wide receiver Jeremiah Flores led the team in catches with 5 catches for 61 yards and a touchdown. And Brandon Munoz on the defensive line had the best stat line for the defense with 6 total tackles, a sack, and an interception. So he's been a disruptive force in indoor football for the past couple of seasons. Spent some time in Jacksonville the past couple of years before coming over to Wheeling. And the nightmare season just continues for Wheeling, and they hope to get it turned around, and they hope to get back on track and start to stack up some of these wins and build that resume for the playoffs and hopefully get in to it. But next week they're hosting the undefeated Beaumont Renegades. So if our history with Beaumont is any indication, it's going to be a thriller. It's going to be a very fun game, and Wheeling needs this next one very badly. Then last game of the weekend we're going to talk about is the Sioux City Bandits taking on the Idaho Horsemen, and Sioux City won this game 78-42. So quick math, 120 points scored in this game. Lot of points. And there's a common phrase amongst the sporting community right now, and common smack talk you'll see, it's BTA. Belts to ass. Yes, that's what it stands for. Oftentimes, it's not very applicable in this situation where, like, you'll see a team like win by a single touchdown, and you'll see like a player doing like the belt motion. It's not applicable in those types of situations, but in this 36-point victory, it's very applicable. This was very much a BTA game. Sioux City had been having some offensive woes over the past couple of weeks, and didn't look like themselves, and just couldn't really finish, couldn't really get in the end zone as often as they would like, and they just took all their frustrations out on poor Idaho in this game. Both quarterbacks, Reed and Lowenstein, got in the game in this one. Each had multiple touchdowns thrown. Drew Prohaska was the NAL Offensive Player of the Week with 11 rushes for 80 yards and 3 touchdowns, along with 3 2-point conversions. So he's responsible for 24 points on his own. Wide receiver Blair had a phenomenal, just absolutely phenomenal catch into the wall, a one-handed catch into the wall for a touchdown. Did not nearly get as much attention as it deserved. And Sioux City just could do no wrong. Their defense was flying all over the place. They had a pick six, and I think one more had a pick six and like 7.5 total tackles on the day. And they were just going off. And if this is the Sioux City that we see the rest of the season, it's going to be a crash course for whoever gets in their way, and it's going to be very exciting to see if they can finish the season as strong as we expect them to. But for Idaho, they were just on the wrong end of a beatdown. It's as simple as that. Caleb Lowe, like we talked about a little bit earlier, departed Idaho and went to Northern Arizona of the IFL. So they turned to Giovanni Sanders at quarterback, who played pretty well, except for the turnovers. 184 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Wide receiver Kyler Hinson led the team with 8 catches for 78 yards, but the team just got absolutely sparked in this one. There's not much they could have done. Scoring 42 is respectable, especially considering some of the offensive output that they've had so far this season. but they just gave up way too much on defense. And I still don't understand why Idaho does not utilize the high motion. They use it very sparingly, but they don't like, let alone one high motion. They don't use the two high man motion, and that is permitted with the indoor set of rules. And it's just so confusing because you're literally putting yourself at a disadvantage by not doing it. You got to have a literal running head start on offense, but you're not utilizing it. And it just feels like, man, if you just did that one thing that could give you a slight edge, a coin flip edge on half of your plays, that's a big difference. That can go a long way. But unfortunately for Idaho, they're sitting at they're sitting at 3-4. They're last in their division, but they would be second if they were in the American division based on the other teams' records in that division. So it's a very, very interesting record situation where they're last in theirs, but they'd be second in the other one if they were just flipped. So Idaho, they've got their work cut out for them. They have a very tough division of teams to try to steal wins from and ultimately snag one of those two playoff spots coming from their division. It's not impossible, but it's not looking very likely for Idaho. And that's the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to check it out. A lot of ball to talk through. Glad we were able to get through it all. We've got a really good slate of games coming up in the AF1, IFL, and NAL. We got a couple game of the week nominees that could end up being game of the year nominees if the games live up to the hype. So a couple good ones to note: Nashville, Albany in the AF1. Bay Area, Arizona, and IFL. And then we touched on it with Beaumont and Wheeling. That's going to be a very fun one as well. So a little sampler of each league. If you haven't watched one of those leagues, those are some pretty good ones to check out. Big thank you to Rob Jones Jr. again for coming on the show and talking about his football journey, talking about this year's Cats team and that Cats culture that seems to be trending the team in the right direction. So please make sure you go give him a follow on socials and let him know you heard him on Off the Wall. And while you're on socials, give us a follow as well at Off the Wall FB. F as in foot, B as in ball. Off the Wall FB. We're on X. We are on Instagram. We're on TikTok, Blue Sky, Threads, all the things and stuff. Go follow us on there. Like, subscribe on YouTube. Like, rate, subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of the things and stuff. Really appreciate all the support up to this point. And we're in the midst of the arena and indoor season. And this is the chaos that we were hoping for months and months ago when we were hoping for the season to start. So there's only 24 hours in a day. The fact that you chose to spend like an hour and a half here listening to me talk about arena football and listening to the conversation with Mr. Jones a little bit earlier means a lot. So appreciate all the support. Let's enjoy this upcoming weekend of football, and I'll see you on socials. Take care.